participation, forbidden knowledge television. This must be stopped.
Hey, what's happening? It's Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge. And guess who I have here with me today? I have the world famous, amazing, best-selling author of multiple books, and of course, with the Epic of Humanity and myself. Here we have Matthew LaCroix, a known world traveler. My friend, it's an honor to have you here.
You as well, my friend.
Sitting here in the studio with me side by side. Man, what a blessing. If you don't know who Matthew LaCroix is, I'm telling you, make sure you look him up. He is a master, and I mean a master at understanding the ancient tablets from ancient civilizations. Not just tablets, though, scriptures, papyruses, cylinder scrolls, you name it. He has also gone back to go and put together the pieces of the puzzle to paint a picture about what happened in our ancient past. So it's an honor to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you everybody for listening to this tonight. Yeah, it's great to have this conversation, and we're going to get into some ancient catastrophes, some sunken cities, some lost civilizations.
Yeah.
You know, really like kind of the bread and butter, what people want to hear about right now, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, people always want to know about the past. And I know people sometimes ask me, why do you focus on the past so much? Why are you focusing on the past? And I'm like, the past is the future. If we can't understand the past, how can we build a brighter future? It's almost like you're doomed to make the same mistakes over and over again, right?
Yeah, and I think the greatest concept that I find that's lost when I talk to people so much is this idea that we, in school, we're told a certain version of history. Mm-hmm. We're told who we were then in this primitive state, this nomadic hunter-gatherer state where we're kind of wandering around the world, hunting animals and like setting up little base camps and moving along. Yeah. And really the problem I think that exists, maybe the greatest problem that exists, is a disconnection between the ancient past and understanding in a way of revering it. Yeah. Revering these ancient masters, revering these civilizations that disappeared so long ago that they became a myth today. And the problem, though, is that we are shown in our ancient history or our ancient past is often from a primitive lens, a primitive standpoint. So then people say, what do I care about learning about the past? What do I care about what happened long ago, thousands of years ago? How does it relate to now? What I truly believe from everything that I've seen is that what we're really missing right now, because society is at least getting more conscious, we're learning more about spiritual aspects, energetic, multidimensional aspects of who we are, with consciousness. But what we're missing is bridging the ancient energetic spiritual side with the ancient side. Yeah. Because if we understand who the ancient people really were, from ancient texts, from ancient Egyptian, ancient Mesopotamian, ancient Incan texts, ancient Mayan texts, ancient Vedic texts. It doesn't matter where we go. Yeah. When we understand those civilizations and what they knew, we will realize that they actually knew tremendous amounts about the metaphysical reality, balance and harmony of nature, their role in the universe, their ability to reach divine states of consciousness higher than we can ever imagine through these temples that are aligned with energetic nodal points on the earth with these perfect ratios of mimicking like the earth, moon, the sun, and the different star constellations like Orion. Right. When we finally understand that they were the masters of reality, then we will start to want to care about what they have to say.
Exactly. That's huge. Understanding that they were the masters, that they were the ordainers of their own destiny, as some call themselves. And they literally had the capability of foreseeing the future events that they wanted to see unfold on the planet. And they would then set upon putting the action in place to create those futuristic events and see them unfold in real time. These people understood the universe in a way that we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
That's why we got to stop thinking about it as a primitive background. Yeah. Now, when we talk about the ancient history, let's make something very clear. I'm sure some people on this know some of this, but it's good to get us all on the same playing field. Yeah. We are not talking about the last 6,000 years of human civilization. We're not talking about that period of time when there was sort of this linear growth to get to where we are now. That started from a place of forgetting everything.
Yes.
So if we look at the Kali Yuga cycles out of the Vedic text and the ancient Indian civilizations, they understood that there are cycles and ebbs and flows of energy during different ages. And what we need to really wrap our heads around is, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about the ancients?
Right.
Who are we talking about? Are we just talking about, let's say the dynastic Egyptians? Or are we talking about something so far back that it was literally forgotten?
Yeah.
And that's why we've come so far in the wrong direction, in my opinion. Losing this understanding of the stars and our connection with energy and consciousness. How many people listening to this right now will go spend 30 minutes going to a completely dark place that with no light pollution at all and just stare up into the cosmos and remember that connection? Very few. Very few. And that's that illusionary reality we exist in, where we almost forget that we're on this incredible ride through the universe, and that we're part of it in a way that's not a consumer. It's not a predator. It's a steward. It's a guardian. It's something powerful. And so what are we talking about when we talk about the ancients? We're talking about the ancient people that existed before around 12,000 years ago.
That's right.
Because that is when we find, and we're going to talk about that today, that's when we find catastrophes across the earth that wiped out almost everything that once was and left only these little breadcrumbs, these scraps, these pieces, these foundations of megalithic temples, these remnants of ancient texts that were buried under layers of mud, these giant statues that they've uncovered that they were wondering how they were even possible that they built them. That's the group we're talking about, the lost masters of our reality.
Right. And when you begin to look back, at the ancient past, and we're looking beyond that 12,000 year mark, the structures are incredibly more sound than the structures that come into like the dynastic era. That come into some of the more, what we consider to be more modern, being only 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Those structures, as you come further forward in time, they're not as magnificent. They're not as megalithic. They're not as complex. So we're talking about deep, deep, deep antiquity to the real masters of the stonework, the real masters of how to levitate stones and move them into place. Some even talk about being able to manifest matter. All this stuff existed a long time ago.
And it existed in a way that we don't fully understand even today. We have machinery and we have stonemasons that can create some structures. But that understanding of specific types of stones that were being used, placing them in a very specific location energetically, using these positions that are aligned with star constellations and others. Nothing was done by accident. What we need to get past is this concept of, well, this civilization was created here simply because resources were available and it was a place where they could create something for a sustainable economy. There's a whole nother concept there that doesn't really exist in our understanding. Give me an example. Let's look at the Tiwanaku civilization. Or you could even say maybe it's the pre-Tiwanaku civilization. We don't really know.
I know, right?
But for those who don't know, that's in Bolivia today. And it's at the southern end of Lake Titicaca. Now, if you go there, you'll find that it's a very inhospitable place to live. There's very few, if no trees at all, very little water. It's quite a dry, high elevation desert location. So what is a civilization doing building there? Now, I mean, the first thing to obviously point out is that environment was likely much different when they were there. But we find that around the world in all of these really particularly unusual places where they built. And give me an example like Machu Picchu. Way on top of the mountains.
Getting the resources up there, how did you do it?
Why though? Why go to all those lengths to do all these extreme things unless there's this understanding of energy and on energetic nodal points of the earth and with the cosmos that we have completely forgotten today. And that's why I firmly believe that the new golden age of humanity, one of the ways that we usher it in, I think the most important way, it's not about us rebuilding them all, because I don't think that's feasible right now. But what if we create sanctuaries around these ancient sites that were in these nodal points and reactivate them? Bring them back. We have all the masters that have ever lived here right now.
We haven't.
They're here right now,
Yeah.
and they're here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
We need to bring everyone together and realize what we're doing is like singing in the age of Aquarius.
Right.
Singing is not, the phrase of singing is not really singing.
Mm-hmm.
Our voice is about creation.
Yeah.
We are creating something. We're creating a new age.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to bridge the ancient with the modern, the old and the new world, and bring them together in a cohesive way, because I feel like it's one of those waiting games where all of these ancient sites and the energy is known, like celestial beings, all those involved in that, all of it is waiting for this time when humanity can remember who they really are. And you know what I find fascinating, Billy, is that if you read a tablet called The Death of Bill Games, you learn that in that they discuss how this figure that Gilgamesh is obsessed with learning the secrets of immortality, Sayasudra, the great flood hero.
Right.
He's the last human ever given immortality. But furthermore, it discusses in there about how everything was handed down to us of divinity. And then if we lost it again, it would never be handed down again.
Right.
We had to find it ourselves, which is this whole concept of us becoming our own savior and not waiting for an external savior to come. Because if we're going to do that, we're going to wait forever and we're going to end up destroying ourselves.
That's right.
This whole idea is that we are our own saviors waiting to realize it.
Yep.
And that the ancient past and these breadcrumbs and keys scattered around the world, if we can put them together, we can put together a puzzle, Billy.
Yeah.
A puzzle that unlocks the potential of who we are. So we can finally remember and then return to that and take that knowledge of the masters, bring it into a modern age with everything we have, and become that truly new golden age that we've been waiting for.
And that's what it's all about, folks. The information, all of these pieces of the puzzle have been laying around for eons, waiting on a time when we arrived.
Exactly.
We are the people here and now that are able to unlock the mysteries that have been left behind and to put together the pieces of the puzzle and then to explain it in a way that the general population can take it, digest it, and discern it so that we can begin to build this new age that you're talking about.
Exactly. And it doesn't start with someone external. It starts with all of us realizing our power.
Yeah.
And see, that's what I feel like is the greatest trick that's ever been played on humanity, is this concept of what we are, and maybe what we can become. And those two things, if we lay them out and look at them, we say, well, look at all the people a lot of people of the world today. They're giving away their creative energy. They're giving away all of their abilities out to others to dictate for them through the mass media, through trying to condition their thinking, through corrupt politics, through all of these aspects, is they're stripping away the creative potential of who we really are inside.
Facts.
Go find some quiet place somewhere deep in nature. Stare up into the stars. Stare up on a beautiful day. Meditate. Connect to your inner world. Break free of those illusions and realize the truth of who you really are. It's waiting for us. It's not going to wait for somebody else to come and tell us, hey, by the way, this is the way. You have to follow it yourself. You can't lead a horse to water and make it drink.
Right. Like I say that all the time, guys. And what we're talking about is taking a journey to inner space.
Exactly.
Forget outer space right now. Let's go to inner space, because most people truly don't know who they are.
No.
Like I say, you were given a name, a race, and a religion when you were born, and you spend your whole life defending a false identity. A lot of the times, we don't even know who we truly are. Who is Billy Carson? That name was given to me. You know, what do I truly like? What is my true self at my core? I had to go on a hero's journey of self-discovery to learn this.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
And I think everyone listening to this should remember that each of us has our own unique path and journey that we must walk.
Yes.
No one's taking the same direction, the same path, but guess what? They all lead to the same place.
Yeah.
It's like these pathways through some dark forest.
Right.
And you don't know the way out. And if you try to use your logical mind, you're never going to get out.
Yeah.
You're going to be in there trapped in an illusion forever. The way out of that, the way out of that darkness to get through, because the darkness is all, you know what the darkness really is about, Billy, in my opinion? The darkness is about challenging us to build character. If you can be tricked by the darkness and illusions and deception, then you're not ready. You're simply not ready yet.
Yeah.
That's the gatekeeper to prevent those who are not actually ready to get to the next step, to keep them behind. But anyone that wants truly in their heart to discover who they are, and they go down that path of maybe completely changing their life, saying, oh my God, all these things I'm doing are not serving me.
Right.
All these people that are in my life are not serving me. They're holding me back. So then why are you associating with them? Exactly. Why are you holding on to those old ways? The moment you're in right now is all that matters. The past and the present and the past and the future don't exist.
Exactly.
Only the current moment exists, which means that all these excuses of, well, I can't do this because of this or bills or this, find a way. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Be smart, be creative, but more importantly, trust.
Yeah.
Get out of here and get more in here. Trust the guidance. Start listening to your intuition.
Yeah.
Start listening to these higher paths and say, well, you know, maybe I could be doing something really different with my life, and see where it takes you.
Yep.
You may be really surprised where that journey goes.
I hope you guys are paying attention and listening to what Matthew is talking about. We're having a great discussion tonight, and we're going to talk about sunken cities and ancient civilizations. But this is so much deeper. This is why this topic has been allowed. The energy is flowing through us right now, and it's been allowed to flow because this topic is such an important topic, which is really finding out the reason why we're here and why this information is even important in the first place.
Yeah.
We're rediscovering our own selves. This is the true discovery. When I go to these ancient sites, it's a mirror of me. All these places that I've been all around the world and you've been, this is all about rediscovering who we are, you see? And so this journey is a lifelong journey. And so some people come to the epiphany that they've made it and that they've reached the pinnacle of all information and knowledge. And now they have the right to look down on others and tell them what they are and what they shouldn't be and what they should and shouldn't do and so forth and so on. But it's a lifelong journey. It's something that will never end.
Yeah, I like to equate it as that analogy, that example of like a fenced in, you could call it a fenced in farm.
Yeah.
Right? Where you have someone leading around groups of people, and they're promising all these things, all these illusions, but they're just leading around in circles. It's a trick. It's a trick, man. There's no way, unless you can get out of that mindset.
Yep.
You're stuck in it. It's being like Plato's cave of illusions.
Yeah.
They're being shown on the wall. They're not really real. And I like to think of it as when the person finds that hole in the fence and they take off and they run off into the sun and they say, oh my God, I'm free. Yeah. It's just like what you just said. Yeah. Saying, oh, I've made it now. Like screw everybody else. I can look down on them and I'm on my own. Yeah. At that moment, you realize, you stop. You say, well, what now? Right? I'm here. My journey isn't over. It's just begun now. It's a new journey. It's begun. I'm now connected to a higher place. I'm connected to a divine place. Now, what do you do with it? Yeah. What do? You go back in. You go back in, you free the rest of them.
That's what the masters have all done.
You don't free them in a way of coming in to be a savior. You show them how to become their own savior.
Exactly.
You tell them, just like we've always been told, that the kingdom of heaven is within. It's not outside. It's within you. And if you want to find that path out, look inside, look inward. And don't be afraid, like Carl Jung says, to illuminate the shadows and darkness of who you really are, to find higher consciousness. That's what it takes. Yep. You can't cleanse yourself. You can't go through this path of having all this darkness and baggage and think that you can move to the next level with that. You have to cleanse that first. Yep. You have to find a way to say, look at all these things holding me back that's keeping me from a balanced state, keeping me from a higher conscious state. How about even just the environment you live in? Surrounded by cities and loud noises and people screaming and yelling at you. Those environments are, being in the right environments, almost as important as everything else.
Absolutely.
There's these fundamental things that we have to do to get to that place. Yeah. Find your sanctuary. Find your peace. Yeah. Find the place that you can be you, and then see where it goes. See who you really are. Yeah. You might be surprised who you really are when you actually figure it out, rather than thinking who you've been your whole life. Right. Because I know that for me, at least my first 25 years, I wasn't really Matthew LaCroix. Right. I was someone that I thought was Matthew LaCroix.
Exactly.
And it's not until you truly embrace and love who you are and just allow your inner child to just run free in some field and just have that wonder again that you can become that.
That's a fact. I remember when I was running a call center, I owned a call center. I had 3 other partners, and it was a big call center. We were making a lot of money. The money wasn't the problem. It wasn't my passion, and it wasn't who I was. And I remember I walked in one day and I said, this is it. I just have to walk away from this. And I walked away cold turkey, no plan, no backup, no nothing. I walked in, I gave away my share of the company. I wished everyone well and wished them the best. And I said, I have to go do what I'm passionate about. I have to go fulfill my destiny. And I had to step into who I truly was. And I walked out.
Where did that come from, though?
It took time, but me realizing that I wasn't living in my passion and that what I was doing was not, it was a great business plan for people who want to be in that industry. But it wasn't to me fulfilling the needs of the world. It wasn't to me, that business wasn't going to help people in a way where it was going to awaken consciousness. It was going to awaken souls, that it was going to expand the minds of people to help bring back a golden age. It wasn't going to turn people into researchers. It wasn't going to. And so I felt this need like, well, I have a certain level of knowledge at that time and that I need to be able to go back and I need to share with people in a way that I could begin to help them become free for themselves. And I realized that I just wasn't living my true destiny, that the longer I stayed there, no matter how much money I was making, I wasn't fulfilling my own true personal destiny and stepping into my own power of who I really am. And so I walked out, and the next day I became forbidden knowledge.
And I think the lesson there is that even if you think what you're in is kind of a cushy little situation to support only yourself, if it's not in alignment with who you are and what you want to do, if it's that uncomfortable feeling where you're saying like, this doesn't feel right, then it's not.
Yeah.
And I think the scariest thing, Billy, is truly trusting intuition and the guidance of the universe.
Yes.
And knowing that it'll work out. But the trick is the law of attraction. You must become that.
That's
you
right.
can't just think it. You can't say, well, I'm going to be successful, right? You have to literally embody everything of what you believe. You said you wanted to you started Forbidden Knowledge TV. You had to embody that in every core of who you are. And that's how things manifest. It's not about just simply an idea. It's about becoming the entire embodiment of what you want.
Yes.
And it's not about chasing. It's about attracting. And that's really the hardest lesson, I think, is that so many people are chasing, thinking that whether or not it's even relationships or money or this dream home or this dream place, stop chasing. Stop chasing and create.
That's it. Create
something that you truly want.
Yeah, that's a fact. Beautiful. I hope some of you are getting some of this knowledge tonight. This was a great talk. We have 1,700 people here in the live chat. Please make sure you guys click the like button, click that like button so we can get the algorithm going. And also, please make sure that you share the video. All right, we want to get as many people in here as we possibly can. How's the audio doing, by the way? Let me just check on the audio because I had a lot of stuff disconnected today and I had to reconnect everything. Let me know how the audio is. Let me know if there's any lagging or if everything is on point in terms of the audio and the video. Just want to take a quick sound check with you guys. Great audio. Fantastic. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys. And anyone who has been dropping any kind of chat donations or anything and leaving great comments, we appreciate you. Obviously, we're having like a two-way conversation, so I can't really pay too much attention to the chat tonight. But we're going to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about some of these civilizations that did reach a golden age, that were able to discover who they truly were. And to sustain that for a period of time, and then for several reasons, they fell. So what's your favorite, sunken city maybe to talk about?
Well, it's hard to not just jump right to the sunken city off Cuba.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. A tough one. I mean, if we want to go over here, we actually in the Ethic of Humanity, we can go to it. So people, if people don't know,
go ahead.
Here, let me go to it so that we can find that. Here is that on page.
And by the way, we're in these We have the hard copies.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, these are limited edition hard copies that Matthew and I just signed on video. We had my son in here recording us signing these, autographing each individual hard copy. These are hard copy with full color pages, a limited edition, and we're talking about how you can get your hands on one of those. It's a collector's edition. It actually says special edition on the cover now because there's been some things added to this particular version, this hardcover version, and they're personally autographed by Matthew and I. So we'll talk about how you can get your hands on those a little bit later.
Highly recommend. If anybody hasn't seen this yet, it's absolutely incredible. The hardback cover also includes an entire reference guide in the back for all the tablets with page numbers, as well as all color photographs. Absolutely incredible. Giving you an example right here. The Sumerian king list has never looked that good, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're reading off of, if you want to follow along, page 137. And in that, we talk about sunken cities.
Yes.
And there are a number of sunken cities around the world. We've only explored between 5 and 10% of the oceans, Billy.
Right.
And so we obviously have a lot left to explore. It's almost funny to think of the concept that we might have explored more of Mars than we have of our own ocean bottom.
It's wild.
And especially when we consider the fact that these civilizations disappeared 12,000 years ago from massive ocean events, specifically because we know of the discussions with these colossal deluges and tsunamis and rising ocean levels from the melting of glaciers that raised ocean levels hundreds of feet, hundreds and hundreds of feet, submerging these cities under the water and then basically turning them into like a mystery, like an ancient legend. And so let's talk about a couple of them. Now today, one of the ones that's being investigated and discussed quite a bit is what's called Dwarka off of Western India. Now, India is a very cool place. India has what are called these sacred cave temples. Okay. So instead of creating, let's say, like a ziggurat or a pyramid, the ancient Vedic Hindu civilizations believed in their specific style, we'll call it, right? Ellora Caves, Kailasa Cave is probably the best example of it. But there's others like Bara Bara, and as well as on the western coast, right off of Dwarka, you have these incredible temples that then go right down underwater, and you find these enormous underwater cities that are left behind underwater. And then you say, well, that's interesting because when were ocean levels low enough to have those above water? And could we use that as a reference to tell how old these civilizations were?
Exactly.
And there's a number of other ones we can mention. One of the most famous is off of Alexandria, Egypt, where you have giant pillars and statues of a huge lion sitting right underwater. And you can actually dive to those today because they're so shallow.
Yeah, I think I might have a picture of some of the stuff that was coming up from there.
Yeah, there you go, right there. That's stele.
Yeah,
that's a famous stele underneath off of Alexandria, and you can see some of the pharaoh heads and some of the depictions from the pre-dynastic Egyptians.
Yes,
pre-dynastic. Now, what does pre-dynastic mean? It means that if we're looking at the dynastic period of Egypt, roughly 4,000 years ago or so, to 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, we're talking about the culture of ancient Egypt that was before 12,000 years ago.
Right.
The actual builders of the Great Pyramids, the builders of the Sphinx. And of course, look at the Great Sphinx today. They manipulated to turn it into a pharaoh's head that's completely disproportionate to the body. It looks kind of ridiculous. And it was never supposed to be a pharaoh in the first place, Billy. It was supposed to be a lion because the lion is we know that constellation is facing Leo. And Leo was an ancient guardian of the ancient Egypt. Now, another one that some people might not know is called Pavlopetri off of Greece, an amazing underwater city off of Greece that is just being fully explored now. A lot of these places are under mud, so it's very difficult to be able to get down. Depends on the sediment levels, but they're popping up more and more. Now, the big one, the big one of all of these was from 2001 off of Western Cuba. Now, it's an area called Pinar del Rio province in Western Cuba. And that story is fascinating because it's one of the most mysterious. In fact, it probably is the most mysterious, almost conspiratory type of story. Because we know that Discovery Channel, National Geographic were directly interested in funding to go down using rovers to view and see these sites, and the whole thing just poof disappeared.
Yeah.
It just disappeared.
Yeah.
And no one ever heard about it again.
Yep. Facts.
So we can fill in a little bit of information about that underwater city.
Yeah. While you talk about it for
Sure.
a second, I'm going to pull up a picture. I meant to put up a picture of this. Yeah.
Yeah. You can pull up the sonar recreation image.
Yeah.
So located off the western tip of Cuba is a massive, massive sandy plateau that is 2,000 feet underwater. 2,000 feet.
That's incredible.
Now, that is not where you would typically ever find a sunken city.
Right.
It is absolutely insane how far down it is.
Yeah.
Now, that concept might be difficult to understand until we get into plate tectonics, what's known as plate subduction. Now, there are 3 different primary forms of plate movement you can get. And if anyone is curious in looking into this in a deeper level, I highly recommend you look into what's called crustal displacement theory.
Yes.
Now, crustal displacement theory is this concept that it's a hypothesis, but I firmly believe that explains a lot of what we've seen around our Earth.
Oh, for a fact. Even the movement of Atlantis, of Antarctica into its location.
Yeah, this concept is based on the idea that the plates of the Earth are always in motion. They're moving almost like they're floating.
Yes.
They're floating on what really is lava.
Yep.
They're kind of floating on lava. And the way that they're dictated is based on the balance of the magnetic poles, the magnetosphere of the Earth.
Yep.
If the magnetosphere of the Earth shifts too much, you see all those plates slide and move. So what you get with plate tectonics is you either get a plate that rides over the top of another one, creating mountains, crashes into each other, pushing up, or subducting underneath another plate. Now, when we learn about Atlantis from Solon and the ancient temple of Sais and the great Sanchez, that was this like elder priest of that temple, he discusses how Atlantis was destroyed from fire and water, and that it sunk into the ocean and disappeared. Now, today, if we look at where the Azores are, out in the Atlantic Ocean, we find 3 plates that come together in one spot, right there in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. 3 plates coming together, and we find a lot of evidence, like talking to Randall Carlson about this idea of a subcontinent that's been subducted under the ocean and still has, if anyone's listening to this right now, you can even go to something like Google Maps, zoom way out using satellite, and look at how shallow the under the ocean is around the Azores. And it shows you like wait a minute, so are those just the mountaintops that were once mountains that are just literally just sticking above, and the whole thing subducted? Well, we find extensive geologic evidence that there was a massive event during 11,600 years ago, exactly when Plato says Atlantis was destroyed, and Solon does. In that area where we find evidence of tectonic plates that dove under the others and literally subducted an entire area of land. And when we see the descriptions today of Atlantis, it seems to match very, very well with that.
Yeah, it matches perfectly. If you look at places like, for example, in California, the San Andreas Fault, that's on a subduction plate. So I remember when I was younger, they were talking that when that plate shifts, that area of California will turn into a mountain range, but they're wrong. It's on a subduction plate. It's going to drop down and under. So these things are active geological things that can actually happen today. It's just that we're talking about something that happened in the ancient past.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, so there aren't people that are fearful right now necessarily, is to point out that when we see these small movements of plates right now, it's not at all reflective or even related to what they experienced. We're not talking about small movements. What we're talking about is we have to break free of what's known as gradualism. Gradualism is in geology is this concept that we've been taught in school, and it's been very, very hammered in the scientific community.
It's crazy.
Is this idea that anything that happens on Earth happens in a very gradual way. It's what's called gradualism. Give you an example is like the Grand Canyon. Now, I was just there actually, like less than a week ago.
I was there a few weeks ago.
Which was amazing, right? And what you see in the Grand Canyon are massive, massive layers of sandstone. Specifically sandstone because it's easily eroded by water. Okay? Easily eroded by water. Now, that doesn't mean that it necessarily took as long as we're being told to erode that. If it's easily eroded and you have a massive, massive event, you can move a tremendous amount of material. I mean, a tremendous amount. So what we're looking at doesn't matter if it's a Grand Canyon or we're looking at a lot of these geologic formations in like the Scablands of Washington, or like Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock talk about, or a lot of these other areas of Earth, like even the Rift Valley of Africa.
Right.
What we have to realize is that these plate movements and these earthquakes that we see that are devastating, those are just like little tiny micro movements of the Earth right now.
Yeah.
They're just little tiny movements.
Yeah.
That's not what happened in the ancient past, though.
No,
really.
It's like a little clearing of the throat.
Exactly, right? Well, what we're talking about in the ancient past is a conjunction of many, many different events.
Yeah.
You know, what exactly caused the Younger Dryas catastrophes of 12,000 years ago is up for debate. Was it cosmic impacts? Was it coronal mass ejection? Was it a combination of planetary alignments with outer planetary things?
Right.
Maybe it was a combination of a lot of those. But one thing's for sure is that it was like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Now, everywhere in the planet didn't necessarily have those, we can call them almost insane effects.
Yeah.
But some places did. Now, what we find in certain locations, a great example is at the south end of Lake Titicaca. There's an incredible serpent statue there, right north of Tiwanaku, that has this giant black mark strewn across part of it. Okay. It's in a solid black mark that's not on either end.
Right.
And you see that in other places. I see that in Turkey I'm studying. You see that in Egypt with the Colossus of Memnon and many, many other places. And what you see is that there's this burn mark. The burn mark is only about a foot or two wide.
I took a picture of it on the Colossi of Memnon in Egypt.
Those are statues that existed before these events. And what you find is that when talking to people like Brian Forster, is that something came from the Northeast. We know that because those markings and those burns, what are called vitrification, are specifically on like a northeast trajectory, which lends itself to the fact that it was either a cosmic impact from the Northwest or the Northeast, or it was a coronal mass ejection from the Northeast. Now, coronal mass ejections are not quite what people think. It doesn't just blast the whole planet and crisp it into nothing. You'd be gone.
I know.
What happens is when you get this, you get a weakening of the magnetosphere, the poles first, and the ozone starts to have holes open up.
Right.
And when those holes open up, they can target specific spots on the planet.
Correct.
A movie, an incredible, I shouldn't say an incredible movie, a decent movie that has a lot of Hollywood, but a lot of truth woven is called The Core.
Yep.
It's actually
I just watched that the other day.
It has a lot of truth woven into that movie. It's like a little
documentary.
And if you in that movie, a hole opens up over like the bridge between San Francisco, right?
Correct.
And that bridge starts to melt.
You can see the actual solar wind come right in through the Earth's magnetosphere because it's an opening there and sear everything.
Literally, like it starts to melt the bridge.
Yes.
Now imagine if you had these ancient civilizations that were building in these high elevation nodal points that were energetically active.
Yeah.
My question and curiosity here is whether or not those areas were more susceptible to being damaged just because of the energy they were opening and whether or not they were balancing that energy of the planet. And the evidence for that, Billy, talking to a lot of other people around the world, like Ben from Uncharted X, is that you see these giant stone granite boxes and like the Serapeum, right? That we find that have no bodies and no apis bowls inside them.
There's no bulls in them.
But we do find are some of them were severely damaged from some kind of an explosion energetically beneath them. It makes me really wonder if the Great Pyramids and a lot of these other structures were actually trying to balance the energy of the Earth, and that it was almost like a grid overload, which is why maybe those areas suffered some of the most serious damage.
When you analyze them, it definitely seems like some type of a grid overload.
Right?
The way the damage is, the way you see warped diorite and warped granite. How do you warp granite and diorite? I mean, they're like so high on a hardness scale in order to warp them without cracking them.
Heat, right?
Yes, exactly. Mind-boggling. So it does seem like an overload to me.
Now, what kind of heat are we talking about? We're talking about temperatures that would have had to exceed, in some cases, 2,000 degrees.
Facts.
2,000 degrees. Now, let's imagine, like we were just saying a second ago, imagine a grid system like if you live in a neighborhood and you have power grids, right? Yeah. And you have a central grid where you go and it's like all the power is there. They go and they check on it. That's where it would overload.
Exactly.
And that's how I view these ancient sites is that they almost overloaded and like exploded.
Right.
And whoever was there was like vaporized.
Yeah.
That's how extreme these events were. And that's why so little is left behind from them, because the only ones that were able to survive are the ones that saw these events ahead of time. Like Thoth talking about leaving Atlantis to create Kemet in Egypt is this idea of, well, they actually knew these were coming. They could tell, they could map out the ages, these different events, like the Kali Yuga cycle and the Mayan calendar. They understood that these were going to happen, and they would send out their greatest sages to protect and create libraries, knowing that they would all die.
To save the knowledge.
So that in the future, long into the future, we could look back and be able to find our way home, Billy.
Exactly. Breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs to a greater story and a greater understanding.
Facts. And you know, I took a Geiger counter down into the Serapeum, and those stone boxes are still highly radioactive.
Which, how would you get that other than extreme solar or some kind of event, right?
Exactly. And there's one room that we got to go in one of our private visits that has a box that's 1,000 tons. And on it was a little tiny radioactive symbol a sticker that they put on it to let us know it was radioactive. And it's diorite. They
had to warn people so they don't touch it?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can touch it, but too much exposure will get you sick.
It's mind-blowing to think about, even like those granite boxes, just to bring it back for another second. You see those in Abydos, we see them in Serapeum. They just found a new one just the other day, like a month ago.
Yes.
That's a granite box. So for anyone who followed that outside of Cairo, they just found a massive granite box.
Out of a hole.
But that didn't have anyone in it.
No.
Is that a rejuvenation chamber? Is it something energetically for like bringing a soul back in? We don't know, but one of the fascinating things about that is that, give you an example, like the Serapeum, you walk down this set of stairs that go down into the earth to get down there. The problem is it's not wide enough to bring one of those granite boxes down there.
You can't bring it down there, and you can't maneuver them in there.
So how do they get there?
They had to be manifested there either by teleportation or manifestation. You can't even bring the stone to create the box down there, because the stone needs to be 2/3 of the size of the box, bigger than the box, to hone it down to the size of these magnificent boxes, which means they were teleported in there, or whatever technique they use. We don't know. I'm just hypothesizing, but they sure didn't lift them up and hoist them down there.
No, they either built them down there or some other means, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like we still have to get into this concept of, how is the Great Pyramid even built?
Right.
We know for a fact that it was not slaves and pulley systems and such. And even when they take those extreme examples of saying that, even the labor force required would have been impossible. Impossible. 2.5 million stone blocks, an average of 5 to 10 tons each. Now, how could they have done that, Billy? Let's get into this for a minute, because if we look at physics, we get into the physics of them. We learn about things like levitation, harmonics. First of all, let's put that aside for a second. It's like the famous Sherlock Holmes quote, you know, when you're trying to figure something out, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
Exactly.
So let's put that levitation aspect aside for a minute, and the potential of the human mind and the voice, right? How else could they have done it? How did they hoist? First of all, a lot of people don't know, but the outer casing stones are actually quite small compared to the inner stones.
Yes.
Above the king's chamber, you have granite blocks in there that are sealing the king's chamber that are over 50 to 100 tons.
Facts.
Now imagine for a minute putting one of those in place 20 feet or more above you.
Right.
How did they do that? Did they build the pyramids around it?
Right.
We literally don't even know. And then you take that layer for a minute. How did they align star constellations perfectly to it?
With shafts cutting through solid stone all the way to the base and beyond the base. Subterranean shaft.
We know that there are active aquifer systems underneath it. So something energetic was going on there.
Exactly.
Something energetic. But if we take out levitation aspects and the power of the mind, how could they have done it?
It wasn't mud ramps, because you would need more mass in mud than the pyramid itself. It's laughable.
So really what it leaves, remember that quote we just said, whatever remains. What remains, Billy?
Levitation, anti-gravity, cymatic frequencies,
How else could they have done it?
That's the only thing you can do. That's the only thing. That's the only logical option. 2 million blocks of stone plus all the granite, and to put it together in a period of time, they're trying to say 20 years. I think it was done a lot faster than that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
This is how you know. Take all of the greatest wonders around the world and then ask the ancient indigenous who built them and how long it took. They're like, yo, that story you guys are being told, that's not right.
They always tell you days.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take an example, Ellora Caves. If anyone doesn't know Ellora Caves, it's the finest cave temple, single mountain excavation in the world.
There's nothing like that. Temple from a mountain.
Single mountain that's volcanic basalt.
That's right.
One of the hardest stones in the world, 6.5 on the Mohs hardness scale. Now, not only did they carve out a mountain, but the entire thing has been seamlessly taken out and they never found any debris.
None.
Ever.
Zero.
They have no idea where any of the rock went.
Yeah.
And then if you ask the people who built it, they say it was built in like a week.
It's always the same story.
By Vishnu.
Yeah.
They say Vishnu built it and created it. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought that wasn't real.
Right.
And then you're getting into it and now start looking at the Great Pyramids of Giza and the connections we have with these pre-dynastic mysterious Kemet civilization that we know very little about other than things like the Temple of Edfu with Zep Tepi and this concept of, wow, could it actually be like 38,000 years old based on alignments of Leo and all these different concepts. But all around the world, we see the same thing, that the greatest structures ever built were not built by the indigenous at all. Yeah. And the indigenous people are saying, well, the gods built them.
Right. I just took a big tour to Cambodia. I took 20 people out there, and you ask the indigenous priests of the Angkor Wat temple who built this Angkor Wat, the largest temple complex in the world, by the way. And they say it was built in a day and a night, and it was poured into place.
Ooh, like molten.
And it looks molten.
Just like a cast almost of molten stone.
Yeah, like a laser cast that was just filled with molten stone, and then it cured.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And the more we look at it, the more we see that these structures were not really created by man like we think.
No.
They were created almost to be like time capsules of the future. When we can look back and finally see the engineering needed behind them and be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. We can't even do this today.
Right.
I firmly believe that even if the world got together, they could not build the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, no.
In the alignment it has with being a half ratio of the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, and in connecting to star constellations with the precision of those blocks, I don't think we could do it.
We can't do it. And you got to remember one thing. Each block is a different size.
Right.
Some people think that all these blocks are the same exact size blocks, like they're like cookie cutter blocks. Every block is different. That's the problem.
Yeah, and the quicker we can let down our egotistical nature now of our achievements and just release that and say, look what we're creating today. We're creating often very poorly built buildings. They would never last the test of time. No. Most of our stuff is digital. Paper lasts 500 to 1,000 years. We would have very little left from our civilization today.
Yeah.
And so we need to revere the ancients because they built things that could last far longer than we could ever imagine.
Eons.
How old do I think the Great Pyramids of Giza are? I think they're 38,000 years old.
Thank you, my friend. That's exactly what I believe. Exactly what I've been telling the people. On the spot, you're spot on. That's my opinion.
Now, why are they 38,000 years old? I think this would be good for people to understand. Yeah. What we're looking at is the way we know that is to look at a combination of two factors. One being the alignments to Sirius and Orion through the king and queen's chamber of the Great Pyramid. The second is the Great Sphinx, which used to be a lion that faces Leo. And we know that. So the problem here is that we have been put into this box of saying that ancient Egypt and anywhere in the world is in a 6,000-year box, and we have to kind of figure that out. And now we know, of course, like Robert Schoch and Robert Bivol and John Anthony West and Graham Hancock and all of these great individuals came forward and said, no, look at the water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure. We know that it's far older than that, double the age at least, right?
That's right.
They're saying 12, 13,000 years ago, but there's a problem there, Billy. Why would an ancient, I wouldn't even say how. Why would an ancient civilization build during catastrophes around the world?
Yeah, the Younger Dryas happened around that time. Ice Age, I mean.
It wouldn't make sense, right?
No, it doesn't make. You don't want to build during a chaotic period, not megalithic structures.
You'd be trying to preserve, protect what you have, and all those different concepts. So why do we use that age of 12,000, 13,000 years ago? Because that's the last time that Leo aligned with the Great Sphinx,
Right.
and Sirius and Orion lined up based on the precession of the equinoxes. Precession of the equinox is based on the wobble of the Earth that faces different star constellations. Very important to understand. So that if it couldn't have been built during that, then when was the last age of Leo?
Right. You got to go back another precessional period.
You find out that the last age of Leo was exactly 38,000 years ago. Now we go to a place called the Temple of Edfu, and the Temple of Edfu has an inscription written in it called Zep Tepi.
That's right.
And what Zep Tepi means is the very beginning.
The beginning of time, when the gods came from the heavens and turned mud into a kingdom.
And they discuss in that, in Zep Tepi, they describe a motherland like Atlantis. They describe a place that once existed that was destroyed by catastrophes, and that Egypt had to rebuild out of that.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean it was Younger Dryas. That's when all those other civilizations were destroyed eventually later. It means that that original period of these lost civilizations, the emergence of the Golden Age, was nearly 40,000 years ago. And if we think about that, then it means that their Golden Age lasted more than 20,000 years. How long has our civilization been where it is right now? Like 300-400 years?
Yeah, we went from a horse buggy and carriage 100 years ago to where we are now. So we're 300-400 years in.
So that's why we need to revere these ancient masters. They had a golden age for 20,000 years or more.
Yeah.
What could you do with that?
Time. You know how much wisdom you can gain in a golden age in 20,000 years with extended lifespans, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
They weren't dying at 60, 70, 80 years old. It wasn't happening.
No, if you want to look at everything from the Book of Enoch to the Sumerian king list to the Egyptian king list, what you find is that all the original kings were living between 300, 500, 700, sometimes more than 1,000 years.
Yeah.
We try to wrap our heads around that. Now, a lot of people, there are people on this right now who'll be like, wait. I think you're getting the whole concept of Ashar wrong, right?
Yeah.
Ashar, which is an ancient Sumerian term for time, you need to think of in days, not years. Okay, let's stay with that concept for a second. Then how do you explain all the Egyptian kings list, as well as all the ancient, you could say like the ancient Gnostic and the ancient Hebrew
texts? I did a whole video on this.
That have the same dates.
I did a whole video on it, and I brought all the text and all the information directly from mainstream sources that also agree with the 3,600 year period of time, understanding that these people or some of these ages could be thousands of years.
Well, and it gets into that concept I mentioned before of that tablet called the Death of Bill Games, which directly discusses how humans, the last human given immortality was Ayasudra,
right?
And that no human ever again was, and then the lifespans just rapidly dropped. You know, whatever happened in that divided us and changed us from what we were. We used to be something far different. I mean, if the ancients mastered the metaphysical reality of the universe and understanding consciousness, don't you think they would have mastered like the regeneration of the body?
Oh, simple genetics. It's really easy. A genetic modification. We do that all day long with seeds, right? With our foods, with animals. We genetically modify plants. And we're just rediscovering what already happened. And so they had with ease, they genetically modified humans. They took out chromosome number 2 and fused it together and put telomere caps on each end, shortening our lifespans to a maximum of 120 years.
Yeah, it's important for people to understand that in the entire primate world of Earth, there are every single primate on the planet. It doesn't matter if it's an ape or an orangutan. They all have 48 chromosomes.
Correct.
All of them have 48 chromosomes. Human beings are the only primate, Homo sapiens sapien, that has 46.
Correct.
There are no other species that have 46 in that group. What happened, Billy?
Yeah, genetic modification. At some point in the past, someone said, well, you know, we can't let them live too long, because if they live too long, they gain too much knowledge. If they gain too much knowledge, they become too wise. If they become too wise, then we can't put our boot in their neck. This is my personal opinion. So I think that there was a genetic modification that was done at some point to shorten our lifespans.
Yeah, and it's the more that I've looked at it, I think it's based on ages and how that golden age was allowing that to occur and happen, and how, you know, when you imagine that the greatest challenge that you could have, remember we talked about that concept of us having to find our way back and not being given the keys again? It's like a teenager, right? parents of a teenager, I mean, you're dad.
Yeah.
You don't just give them like the nicest car in the world before they ever driven. They're going to crash it.
They're going to crash it.
So you give them a beater, right? You give them like a beater and they're like, oh, hey, I got the bumper messed up. You're like, hey, it's okay. Like, You learn your lesson. We're like those teenagers.
Yeah.
The parents are not going to just give us the keys to everything. We have to get there and earn it.
We got to earn
and
it
I
back.
think part of the fun in that is if you were to have lower lifespans, you'd have a lot less time to figure it out, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
a lot less time.
A lot less. By the time most people begin to figure it out, they pass away.
But it almost makes it into like a quantum speed, like speed up. Like what can you do in 100 years?
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah.
What can you achieve in that amount of time?
Yeah.
What is possible in that little gap?
And we're beginning to show what we can do.
We're just getting there now.
Because look what I just said, 100 years ago,
right.
we were in a horse, buggy, and carriage. I mean, think about where we are right now. This is an incredible accelerated path. And that's with the suppression and the oppression. Can you imagine without that?
Imagine a world, and I know people talk about these wonderful concepts, but imagine a world where all of the most incredible humans could all get together with the greatest ideas to create like a new golden age with all the greatest technological concepts, spiritual concepts, all the metaphysical concepts, the greatest masons in the world, the greatest, archaeologists, the greatest scientists in every capacity, and the greatest minds.
Yeah.
If we came together as a humanity, what could we do, Billy? What could we achieve rather than competing?
It would be mind-boggling what we could achieve, because right now with the competition mindset, it's a lack of abundance mindset. And so everyone's fighting over scraps. You take away the competition mindset and you put in the collaboration mindset, and we accelerate at an exponential rate to the point where we bring a golden age almost like that.
Have you ever seen a movie called The Beautiful Mind?
The Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind. With Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, yes. He was a mathematician, I believe.
There's a little secret hidden in that. If anybody wants to go watch that, there's a little secret. In that, he's going over all these mathematical functions that have to do with human probability and like human actions and different things, right? And he ends up coming up with this brilliant concept. It like really like almost brought you to almost tears thinking about it. And what he realizes in that, and everyone thinks he's crazy, remember? He realizes that all of humanity's been pitting against each other, competing, and the output is non-existent almost. And he's talking about how through energy and the human potential, the greatest thing you could do would be collaboration.
Exactly.
And he ends up coming up with that, and it's like this wild concept because everything in our world has been created around division and competition.
Yep.
And it's this wild idea. It's simple. It's very simple, isn't it?
Very simple.
It's a simplistic concept, but the world has yet to even get close to recognizing the potential of it yet.
Facts.
We're getting there. I think social media is connecting us in a way where, you got people all over the world we know, and we're connected, and we're becoming a world civilization. But until we can understand the power of collaboration to the greatest level, that is what will be one of our greatest limiting factors in this.
Absolutely facts. But I wanted to kind of wrap up on something we did in Maine, the myth of Adapa.
Yeah.
Because now we're talking about, really what we're talking about is the power that's locked inside of us, and the way that we're created, being above all, and finally finding our way back to understanding the true power that we hold, and the knowledge and the wisdom that's already inside of every single atom in our body. And so if you can just give a brief summary of the myth of Adapa as we kind of wrap this up. I think it's kind of inspirational for people to hear this.
Sure. The myth of Adapa is one of the oldest sets of cuneiform tablets we have that came out of ancient Sumer, not the Akkadians, Assyrians, or Babylonians, or Chaldeans. It was originally a Sumerian story, and it comes from one of the oldest stories arguably ever told. And it's discussing this perfect human that exists, that's been created. And his name is Adapa. And it's described in there that Adapa's not a king or a priest. He's a sage. He's a great sage, a knowledge keeper. Yeah. And in that, the most fascinating part of the myth of Adapa is it states that Adapa was greater than even his creators, that he had the potential to be the greatest, most powerful being of all. And instead of this concept of thinking that we can never achieve that great power, we have to realize that we are actually the most powerful beings in the universe.
Yes.
If we can only understand that and the potential of where we're going to go in the future, we've just begun to tap into our gifts and potential. Imagine these gifts that have been lost 12, 13,000 years ago through our genetics that are dormant in our DNA, but not gone. They're there waiting. They're waiting for the time when we can reach these great states of humanity together. And then we're going to unlock something, Billy.
Yeah.
As co-creators of this planet, we're going to unlock the greatest potential we could ever imagine that the masters all knew.
Yeah.
And were practicing. But it wasn't their time.
Exactly.
It wasn't for them. Everything they did was to leave behind for us.
It was for us.
It was for our time. So we could find our way home.
This is the time. This is the place. This is truly one of the greatest times to be alive. Some people say everything is coming to the end and the world is ending. No, the world is just beginning. You see how you have to see things? This is the beginning, not the ending. There's a lot of people preaching the end times doctrine. No, this is not the end times. It's the beginning times. Literally in recorded history right now, the best time to be alive. We don't have the bubonic plague. We don't have the black plague. We don't have the Spanish flu. We don't have the papal inquisitions. All those things took out millions of people. We don't have the American Holocaust, indigenous tribes being slaughtered, 111 million over the course of 7 years. We don't have that happening right now. Do we have little hot spots happening around the world of situations and wars and rumors of wars? Yes, we have that. Overall, right now is the absolute best time to be alive. And for the people like ourselves and those of you who have the ability to get on the internet and actually listen to our voices and watch us on a screen, you're also in a position to impart your impact on the future of humanity. So you can take some energy from the knowledge that you've gained and begin to help change people's lives and minds, or help them to see themselves in a different light, in a different way.
Exactly.
We all have power.
It's really comes down to the fifth prophecy of the Maya. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
All systems based on fear and control in this illusionary world will end. So it's not about the end of our world. It's about an end of what was.
That's right.
The end of the old energy, the old illusion. It's all disappearing. Yeah. We're finally going into a different age. And I know that can be fearful for some at times, unknowing, a little bit maybe unbalanced to them, when they look around, oh my God, look at all these things happening around the world. They're just growing pains of us moving into a new age.
Absolutely.
But the truth is that all those things you just mentioned, horrible diseases and horrible wars that millions and millions die. And our consciousness in the place we're in now would never allow those things to ever happen again. Yeah. And even those things are being pushed on us. And through the media and all these different things to brainwash us into allowing it, we're not going to, because our consciousness isn't there any longer. And all those old tactics and all those old things to control and keep us in that energy, they're just disappearing and dissipating. Because it's inevitable and it's our destiny what we're going into.
It's a fact. No empire has ever persisted forever. So if you think that, oh man, there's no way this is going to dissipate or fade away, like he says, well, is the Roman Empire still here?
Empires are unsustainable. They have to be transformed in order to survive.
Correct. So listen, we're telling you right now, buckle down, put your feet, the 2 feet firmly on the ground, and begin to just enjoy the energy, take in the energy, and begin to share positive vibes, begin to share enlightenment, and be ready to answer questions and guide people where they need to go look to help find their own answers to their own questions.
Yeah, and make sure you also spend the time on yourself. Yeah. Find the inner voice and find the guidance of who you really are. And then when you feel ready, then go help others. Go help others and see if maybe you can make a greater impact than you ever realized.
Absolute facts. And guys, don't forget, I will be at the Regal IMAX cinemas all over the United States. And that's going to begin May 12th, starting in LA, Los Angeles. I'll be at the Los Angeles Regal Live Cinemas, and it's going to be amazing. And before we wrap up, I just want to say, Matthew, amazing.
Thank you, Billy. I appreciate everything.
A real honor having you on here tonight. And let me see if this is the right commercial. I hope it is. That was actually Egypt. But But I'm gonna switch my profile real quick to find the quick commercial of us for the Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed. Here it goes. Don't forget, I want to see you. I'm coming to a city near you very soon. Regal IMAX Cinemas. We all have one question. Who are the Anunnaki?
The Anunnaki is arguably one of the greatest mysteries of our ancient history and our past.
We have to ask, who were the gods? The gods were extraterrestrials.
Join me in this grand odyssey and discovery as we seek to uncover the hidden truths of the Anunnaki.
By studying the Anunnaki, we truly unlock the secrets within ourselves at the same time.
We are the offsprings of extraterrestrials, and that...
All right, with that being said, thank you, everyone. We got 2,800 people in the live chat right now. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for spending time with Matthew and I. Make sure you guys get a copy of the Epic of Humanity. All right, Epic of Humanity. And you can get a hardcover right now on Amazon.com. A special edition hardcover is available on Amazon.com. So make sure you guys go and check it out. And congratulations again, the author of the quarter.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it.
No problem. All right, y'all, we got to sign off. All right, this man has a lot of work to do. He's getting ready to head out of the country and go to work, looking for ancient sites and making better connections to help humanity get to the next level. Third Eye Love. Peace.